Yes. Yes, I know this is not an off-highway vehicle, but I have to replace the clutch in my Shadow Spirit. So I figured I'd take you guys along for the ride, show you how we get it done. Stay tuned. All right, so the reason I'm replacing the clutch, this thing grabs, no problem. The thing is, I've got it adjusted so much that I have to have so much free play in here just so that it'll grab just off the bars. Otherwise, she grabs way out. So she's definitely worn. The plates are worn. We're gonna rip it apart, get that fixed up so we get our free play back to where it needs to be. So the clutch on this bike is actually under this right side outer crankcase cover. And as you can see, you have your clutch cable coming to the arm. We're going to need to drain the oil. Also, this rear brake arm down here is actually over the front of the cover, and I'm going to pull off this front exhaust pipe. With the stock setup, I don't remember if you'd have to do all that with the exhaust. I don't really remember, but this is a Cobra aftermarket pipe system. It's definitely going to be easier to take it off, so let me get that going. Next, we're going to go ahead and drain the oil so we can get the crankcase cover off. I'm going to spare you having a look at my mechanic's crack, so I'll hold the camera and I'm going to actually bring it underneath the engine and show you where the drain plug is. Kind of a difficult spot with this particular bike, so let's get underneath. So this is the bottom of the engine here. The oil filter is in the back of the block. Super simple to get to. And then the drain plug is right up here behind where the water pump hose comes in. Would have been a lot easier if that wasn't there, but we can get in there with a wrench and get this drained. I got the oil draining, 17mm bolt. Quick little tip, throw a 2x4 underneath your kickstand. Definitely get the bike a little bit more level, easier to get to the drain plug. Now that the oil and filter have been changed, let's get this cover off. First thing you want to do is take off this top nut, get this clutch cable disconnected. Just slide this out of the way. Once all the bolts are out, to get the cover off, I like to use a wrench. And basically there's a little lip right behind here between the motor and the cover where you can actually get the wrench in there and just lightly pry against the block. You want to definitely be careful not to break any of the fins. And she'll pop loose. And there she is. What I like to do is go in a cross pattern, taking it apart. It's going to be very crucial that you do that, putting it back together so you don't warp any of these plates. It's just a good habit to do it when you're taking it apart as well. What we're doing is letting the spring tension off slowly. Next, you'll need a 30mm socket. 1 1/16 works as well. I'm gonna get the center clutch hub nut off. Now once you get this off, you're going to pay attention. There's a washer behind here. But at this point, you can actually grab behind all the clutch discs across from each other. Just put your finger back here and grab. You can pull this whole assembly out. And we'll take the inner basket out as well. Let's take all this stuff over to the bench and take a look at it. Let's take these plates apart a little bit, see what we've got. Now on the outside of this clutch hub, there's a washer, thin washer. You can see, you can just go ahead and leave that on there. Now you actually have a spring in here, and you want to keep track of the direction that the spring is in. So what it's going to be, it's a concave or convex depending on which way you look at it. This actually has to go with the convex edge or concave edge or the curved edge, the smaller edge of the curved edge towards the big washer on the clutch hub. And what you'll see there is that it's got a little bit of a gap, so it's sticking up. Now your outer disc is going to be a smaller disc than the rest of them. So obviously you want to go that one first. Then we're just going to layer them: steel, friction, steel, friction, steel, friction. This is the kit I purchased. It came with new friction plates. Came with a new set of springs. And it came with all new steel plates as well. This is the best way to do it, ladies and gentlemen. If you just go ahead and replace these discs, sometimes what happens, and this is actually not even really bad, because a lot of times you'll see that these are, especially on motocross bikes that are not taken care of, they're abused. These will be like turning colors of blue and all kinds of colors of being overheated. When that happens, these plates warp slightly, and then you always have sort of a clutch drag. So replace your steels, replace your frictions, get new springs if you can, then you have a fresh clutch ready to go. These discs should not be put in dry. They should be soaked in the fluid that goes into it. This particular one is just going to be in engine oil. If it sits in transmission fluid, they need to sit for a minimum of a half an hour. Just throw them in a plastic bag with some engine oil, let them sit, let them absorb, and then you can go ahead and put it together. So I'm going to go ahead and get them in the oil right now, and then we'll reassemble this clutch when they're done soaking. Alright, the clutch plates have been soaking. We are ready to go ahead and build this clutch pack. We're just going to alternate between friction, steel, friction, steel, till we get them all in there. It's like a non-challenging puzzle game. So we can take our old discs off to the side. I'll just take a look at our pressure plate. Looks good. I don't see any metal shavings or anything like that. We could just go ahead and clean this up if you were worried about it, but I'm certainly not going to do that. Now the clutch on this thing is a little bit tricky to get in, so what I would recommend on this particular one, to keep it all together, put your outer spring retainer on, just 2 bolts and springs, very light. Just to keep a smidge of tension. This keeps all the plates together, but it's still loose enough where you can rotate them if you have to get all these to line up, because you have to spline all of these into the basket. This has to spline onto your transmission, and it's tough when this is falling apart. So I'm going to go ahead and put it back in the bike now. Takes a little bit of wiggling. What's going on now is we're hitting the transmission splines, and it's just not quite lined up. Sometimes you might have to put the bike in gear and just rock it forward and back. We also might be able to turn the basket just a little bit. The splines that we're hanging up on are right in here. They actually have to spline into the basket. So it's a little fine little dance. There she is. Now once that's on, you can take this outer pusher plate. These are my old springs. We're going to put new ones in anyway. Put our washer back. Now there is a torque spec for this. What I do is just get the most powerful gun I can and just hold the trigger down until either the nut stops turning or I run out of compressed air. No, that's not right. I think we'll probably check the specs to torque this down. I'm just going to go ahead and wing it and just go very easy on the trigger until she's snug. And that is going to do it. Now there is actually a little area where you can peen over on this nut, and that will keep it from coming off. And I'll show you that. Now if you look really closely at that shaft, you can see where the original nut was. I might give this a little bit just more of a whack, and then there's actually a little slot in the transmission shaft that I can peen this into. Yeah, she's just about lined up now, so I'll just take a screwdriver, just tap it right there down into that slot, keep the nut from backing off. Next we'll go ahead and install our new springs. Put our clutch pusher plate back on. Now this is where I said it was critical that we cross tighten, and we're only going to go a little at a time. And I'm actually going to hold my hand on the socket to keep it from spinning too fast. Once you got them cranked down, I like to go with a socket. Just give them a little snooge. You don't want to pull them too hard because you could pull the threads out or damage the bolts. So or you could grab a torque wrench and measure it. So that's basically it for the clutch. What we're going to do is clean up the case. We're going to clean up the cover. This actually does not use a gasket. It uses a RTV silicone. So we'll get that siliconed in and get this case back on. Also, you have dowel pins. We want to make sure that we don't lose those. One of them's still in the case, one of them's on the cover. Now a scraper or razor blade works real good on this. I like to use the surface reconditioning. Get one of these Harbor Freight special angle die grinders. Get a surface reconditioning discs. I've cleaned up the inside of the case with a little bit of brake clean. Since I did wash this area with the brake clean, I'm going to go ahead and pull this little pusher out and put a little bit of oil on this shaft. So what we'll do now is we're going to use our silicone. I like to use the Permatex Ultra Black or the Ultra Gray. It's really good, good for higher temperatures and oil resistance. And what we want to do is put a very, very small bead all the way around, and then we're going to let it almost cure. It has to be to the point where when you touch it, it no longer sticks to your finger before we install it. But you still want it to be malleable, so you can't like put it and leave it and go the next day and come back. So it has to be within a certain amount of time, and that's going to depend on your outside temperature and humidity. My arms are a little shaky. I was playing with the Thrill of the Fight on the Oculus Quest. It's a boxing game. It was tough. I was sweating, and now my arms are sore and I'm a mess. So it's a good workout. I want to inspect it, make sure I have a good bead all the way around. Doesn't have to be super pretty, but at least it's going to be contiguous. You can always take a piece of plastic, put some on. This way you could touch it and you'll see when it's ready to go. So now our next step, we're going to go clean up the engine case, get the gasket off that, and by the time we're done with that, this should be ready to go on. Alright, the engine case is all cleaned up. I got the dowel pins reinstalled. Our silicone has been setting up for a while. You can actually touch it and it doesn't leave any marks on your finger, so it's still soft, but it's skinned over, so that's perfect. We'll go ahead and put this on. Just want to be careful not to bump any surfaces. Okay, now we're ready to get our clutch cable and bracket back installed, but first we definitely need to screw this in as far as it will go so we have it play. Also, while I was in here, I went ahead and took the lever off, lubed all this stuff up here, so she be butter. Once that's connected, what we want to have is just about a ½ inch of free play. Right now I have a ton, so we're just going to take up the slack here. That's it. Just want to have a little bit of free play there so that the clutch is not dragging. Make sure she pulls nice and smooth. Oh, she's tight. Feels good. Well, now that we got her all back together, before we do any cleanup on it, we need to go ahead and put oil in it. Now, with the oil drained and the filter, it's about 2.5 quarts. I'm going to put 2.5 quarts of the Shell Rotella T4. It's a 15W40 diesel engine oil. This is a non-synthetic. You don't ever want to really use synthetic oils in a wet clutch system unless it's 100% designed for it. I love the T4. I use it in all my bikes and it works great. You can always use the T6, which is also a full synthetic, and anything that doesn't have a wet clutch. I just absolutely love this oil because it's got a lot of vitamins, minerals, and all the good stuff that the more expensive oils have at a far greater discount to you. So I'm going to put 2.5 quarts in. ice. I put 2.5 quarts in it, ran it for 30 seconds, shut it down, and topped it off. It took about 2.6 quarts, somewhere in that neighborhood, and she's full. So let's go ahead and start her up. One other thing I want to mention is that you should have this pretty much straight up and down as best as you can when checking the oil. In other words, it shouldn't be leaned over on the kickstand. Throw a 2x4 under it or something like that just to keep it upright. So what we're going to do is just break this clutch in real quick, and the easiest way to do that is going to be to go ahead and put it in gear, bring the RPMs up a little bit, just slip it a little bit, pull it back in, slip it, do it 3 times, and then we should be good to go. That's basically it. All we got to do is go out for a test ride. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. If you got any questions, comments, throw them down there in the, you know, we're going to put them down in the box there at the bottom. I'll try to answer them for you. I certainly appreciate you watching. I'd love it if you'd, you know, throw me a thumbs up, give me a subscription. That'd be great. I can keep bringing more content like this to you. Take care. Thanks for watching.